Hey, everybody, welcome to Locker Room. This is Southland's podcast for men, where we redeem men's conversations, talk about the right things in the right ways, and today's going to be fun. My name is Scott Hatfield, and I appreciate you checking out Locker Room. We're in a series called Two Words, where I choose two words, and we do a little bit of a deep dive, dig into God's Word in an effort to really do life with Jesus, live in community with other guys, and strive to live on mission. And so our hope is that these podcasts would encourage and challenge you as men. And I hope that it leads not just to you going, man, that was great, I really enjoyed that, but to actually have a conversation with another man or another guy. And whether you're in high school, this is for you, or college, you're an adult, or you're all grown up, that's totally fine. Maybe this is something that you can share with your son or son-in-law, or your family. Talk about some of this stuff with your wife, with your kids, some guys in your life, even those who are wrestling with faith and Christianity. And so today's a really cool one. Excited about today. I've invited one of my very good friends. We met in 2018 because of a group I led called Fight Club, and I think his story is going to really resonate with you and encourage you wherever you are in your journey with Jesus. You may have a guy in your life that you've been praying for that doesn't know Jesus. You may even be a woman checking out this podcast. And my hope is that you be encouraged with this man's story. So without any further ado, my friend, my brother, Edgar Saborit. How are you, brother?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Very good. So say your name again, because they're going to catch. Is that what county in Kentucky is he from?
Not Bourbon. So it's Edgar Saborit.
Saborit. Okay.
Yes.
What's your middle name?
I don't have one.
You got no middle name?
Nope.
Very good.
No, in Spain we have two last names. The first last name for the father,
okay,
and the second last name is the first one for the mother.
So break down. So
for example, my dad's name was Pere Saborit,
okay,
Canadell.
Okay.
And my mom's name is, they're both alive,
yeah.
Margarita Sala
okay.
Soy. So my name when I was born was Edgar Saborit, my father's first last name, and then Sala, which was the second last name.
Awesome.
Recently, as I became a citizen a few years back, though, it was a pain in the butt because they would move my second last name to middle name. And so I just legally changed my name to just be Edgar Saborit.
Gotcha.
And be done with it.
Yeah.
Just for paperwork purposes. But
gotcha.
But that's how it works.
Very good. Well, we're writing this on the heels of Valentine's Day. So did you do anything fun with your family? Did you do anything fun?
So Valentine's Day-wise, I just came over here and I brought Michelle lunch. Michelle works here as a groups pastor at the Nicholasville campus, and that's just all we did. We went to the Greenbrier in West Virginia last weekend with the kids and the grandparents.
Okay.
Just to thank them for the amount of times that they babysit for us so we can have dates.
Sure.
So that was kind of like our Valentine's celebration, and then we just did lunch yesterday.
What'd you eat yesterday? Did you go big?
No, we never go big. Actually we do, but not for lunch. So we always do the kale salad with salmon or chicken at Harry's.
Buddy.
Kale,
right in line with what we're talking about this past weekend with Nichols' message on eating well.
Yeah, Nicole snuck into our house. Now, to be truthful, we've always enjoyed that, and we're trying to be a bit better about what we put in our bodies. Yeah. We fail constantly, but we try to at least make it happen.
Yeah, I love the fact that he talked about Jesus. He feasted and he fasted. Yeah. And just, hey, listen, we don't have to get all wigged out and worked up. We just do the right things.
I feasted too much in my life.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. Hey, tell them about your family, your kids, your wife. Tell them, we kind of touch that a little bit. And then even just what you do professionally.
Yeah, sure. So I'm married to Michelle. It's going to be 16 years this August.
Yeah.
We have 3 kids.
Yeah.
I've got Jaden, who's going to be 21 this March, which makes me feel crazy old.
Yeah.
We've got Xavi, who's 12.
Xavi.
Xavi, X-A-V-I, so like
Xavi.
short for Xavier.
Yep.
And he is in 7th grade over at Bryan Station Middle, does the Spanish Emergence program. And then Lydia, the little queen's going to turn 9, and he's in 3rd grade at Maxwell Elementary.
Okay.
Michelle works here, as you guys obviously know. And then professionally, I'm a realtor / real estate investor, so God decided I needed to remain self-employed because I don't do well with authority or following directions. So it's just a good way for me to be able to.
Sounds like a lot of us men working on it.
But you know what's cool, Scott, is I don't have to ask for the boss about how I get to talk to people. I don't have.
You better figure it out.
Yeah, well, and if I want to talk about faith and God and Jesus and whatever it is, I want to talk.
Yeah.
I don't need permission. I just go to where in some jobs, you got to be careful what you say.
Absolutely.
So
that's cool.
I like that part.
So obviously you didn't grow up here. You grew up in Spain. And talk about a little bit about what that was like for you. What's that like? You were there until you got to college, right? Or
Yeah, I was 18 when I first came here.
so what was it like growing up in Spain? What city in Spain?
It's a town called Torelló, which is about 13.
Don't you love that accent?
Yeah,
Smooth,
Bourbon
man.
County, baby.
Yeah.
No, but so Torelló is a town of about 13,000, and it's about an hour north of Barcelona, which is right on the coast, and about an hour south of the Pyrenees, where you have the mountains and you cross into France.
Yep.
So grew up in a small town. I mean, everything was walking distance.
Yeah.
We had a good upbringing. It's just that there was no faith anywhere.
Yeah.
There was no church. You just kind of lived your life, and we had, great parents still together today. But there was,
And as far as kind of in Spain, really more of a national religion would be Catholicism, right?
Sure.
Was your parents Catholic or pseudo-Catholic?
To be honest, Spain in the recent years has really identified as agnostic more than anything.
Okay.
So you do the Catholic things because they're traditions. So, everybody gets sprinkled at 2-3 months old.
Did you do that?
Well, I had no choice. So, yes, I have.
Okay. Yeah.
I saw it on a picture, and that's the only way I would have known.
Yeah.
But, when it was time to, and this was interesting, as you're asking how life was, we all went to Catholic school.
Okay.
Okay. So we go through it, and myself, my sister, my 2 cousins, we're like the only ones that never went through all the, catechism classes to take the first communion.
Yeah.
We never did that. So
you kind of audited Catholicism a little bit.
From a very long distance, and it was never talked about, just faith in general. And then my parents never modeled it, and literally.
So literally, you went to Catholic school, but you guys didn't go to church.
No, I mean, we had mass once a week at school, but that was it.
You checked the box.
We did,
Your parents didn't care.
We had no choice. It was part of our curriculum.
Did they send you there because the public schools weren't great, or did they send you there just because that's what everybody did? Or
ironically enough, in my little town, there was about 4 schools you could go to, and 2 were Catholic, and 2 were just public, and they were dirt cheap. Honestly, I mean, didn't cost us almost any money. So I think that. I guess they believed the education would be a bit better but it had nothing to do with getting a faith education. Like here you might go to, Lexington Christian to try to get a faith-based education for your kids. For us, that was in no way, shape, or form the reason.
So growing up in a family that they're intact, they loved you, they love you, your sister, what was important? What were the values that were you felt like that were passed on to you? What was important to you? What did you kind of notice? What did they talk about, or what did you catch from your parents growing up? Just about what was important in life?
More so for my father, I think, but for my dad, his big thing was once a year as a family, we're going to get into the RV or whatever, and we're going to visit somewhere. So we would travel around Europe, which was really cool. Yeah. And we'd go like camping, basically, right? Okay. So we got a chance to go to France, to Germany. We spent almost a month in Holland, almost a month in Switzerland. Wow. I'd kill to do that now. I couldn't afford to do it, probably.
Sure.
But that's kind of, the whole family time was important. So we spent a lot of time together.
Okay.
But also for me, and you were an athlete yourself, at 11, I started playing tennis seriously, and that consumed all of my time.
Did you play soccer as well?
No, I mean, we played at school, but...
but tennis was your sport.
Tennis was my sport. It was individual. I got to do it my own way. Yeah. I got to hustle.
Kind of works with even your job. You kind of...
Honestly,
you're in charge.
The whole lone wolf for me started a long time ago.
It rises and falls with you. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing about it, though, is there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
If you get your butt kicked, you cannot blame the other dude.
That's right.
It's like, it's on me. So... Honestly, my identity was in who I was as an athlete, and unfortunately,
your parents supportive of that?
100%, especially my father, because see, my father grew up in a situation where he had no opportunities to do that.
Gotcha.
So I think for him,
he grew up poor.
Very.
Okay.
And he was, mom and dad together forever. The dad was much, much older, and his 2 siblings, brother and sister, were, I think, 16 and 14 years older than him.
Okay.
So he comes in and he's kind of like, you're gonna have to figure things out. Kind of like we're past our time to taking care of kids in a lot of ways. So he didn't have a lot of access to things. So he spent a lot of time on the street.
His parents didn't invest in him the way that.
No, not at all.
So he had to learn.
He, and he learned
try.
his own way. I mean, he just kind of...
And he's done pretty well.
He's done really
right?
well. Oh, 100%. Yeah, he's a commercial contractor.
When I say that, I mean financially.
Yeah. So my father, he, for what I've learned, he kind of received the message of you'll just never amount to be anybody. You'll never be able to do anything.
Okay.
You'll never succeed, kind of a thing. So...
Did he have a prove it mentality after that?
Well, we all do, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody told you that, what would you do? I'm like, I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
for him, it became start working very early, trying to get independent.
Yeah.
And he had to kind of pay for his soccer uniforms to play soccer, different stuff. If he wanted a motorcycle, he had to work for it, blah, blah, blah. So typical story we hear all the time, right? A guy has been told, hey, you'll never be anybody. I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah. Did he go to college?
No. He started graphic design. He's quite talented with that, but no, not really.
Were you the first kid in your family to go to college?
Ironically enough, and I hated school.
Yeah.
I was the first one to get a college degree.
Yeah.
I always joke I got a college degree against my will.
Yeah. Sure.
I wanted to play sports so bad that that was just my penance, having to go and get my academics in order in a way.
So this led you to the States.
Correct.
Were you choosing to go to the States? Was that the best place for you to play tennis? Did you what? I mean, because you could have gone somewhere in Spain, right?
Well, so the way it works in Spain, there's no teams in universities or whatnot, right? So I come to that pivotal point of all I am is an athlete.
Yeah.
I know nothing else.
Am I going to retire this in high school?
Right.
Or am I going to keep going?
And I'm like, I really want to play tennis, but what's the only vehicle? So
yeah.
Through a connection of a guy back home that had come to Owensboro, Kentucky to do a tennis camp, just to work for experience and to learn the language, I had the opportunity to be an exchange student for 1 year, my last year of high school, in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Okay.
And that kind of started as let's try it out, worst things worse.
Yeah.
This dude learns some English, he comes back home, and then we can address the whole, what do we do next, whether it's college or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that led to a tennis scholarship for 4 years at Georgetown College to play tennis there. So what started as, 12 months led into 5 years.
Yeah.
And as I'm sure we're going to dive into, my choices during those next 4 years led to my move being permanent.
Yeah, so you get to Georgetown and you're playing tennis, and my daughter went to Georgetown. There's a lot that goes on.
There is indeed, and I was probably part of it.
Yeah, so for you, was it because you really did school enough to stay basically eligible?
Correct. The bare minimum.
Yeah, and did you party
more?
all
Yes,
the time. Yeah. Had you done that before in high school? Or
100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Parents didn't care, or did they know?
They had to know unless they were blind. I mean, that was the thing, and kind of looking back at the men that were in my life, I mean, we used to go party with our tennis coaches in Spain.
Okay.
I mean, what a great way to kind of teach the right values, then go get hammered, and, then go party until 6 a.m., go have breakfast, and then go play a tennis match with your coaches next morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, but that's what I knew, and I loved those guys, and I knew that in their own way, they wanted me to succeed, and, they worked hard with me, I worked hard for them, and I mean, I busted it. Tennis was my life. I put all my efforts there, right?
Yeah.
But the tools they were using, looking back, I'm like, my goodness, what in the world?
It can work against you.
It sure did in a lot of ways. Yeah. So talk about learning bad habits, right?
Right. So you're there at Georgetown. Yeah. It leads you to a relationship, and talk about that.
Yeah. Well, there was some bad ones before, but towards my latter times there, I think it was my junior year. Yeah, my junior year, I met Jaden's mom. Okay, and we were both just.
She was a student there too.
She was also a student. Yep. She was a year behind me, and we got together, liked each other, and we did our thing, obviously, and.
So you get pregnant with
Jaden, that just led into
junior year?
Yes, because he was born 2 months before I graduated.
Wow.
College. So I guess it would be. Yeah, I'm not very good at doing math, but all I know is that as soon as I learned that, I had a bunch of classes I had to pass very freaking quickly to be able to get my degree on time. Graduate May of 2002. Yeah. So obviously that was.
How old are you? 21.
22.
20,
I was 23.
21?
I had just turned 23 when Jaden was born.
Okay. So you're
Yes.
22 and she tells you she's pregnant. What did that, did that just
Well-
dump everything upside down for you? Or are you going, oh my gosh?
Well, as you know, because you know me well enough, like my life has been a series of monstrous life decisions without any thought process behind them.
Sure.
Move to the States? Sure. Do this? Whatever. Huh, I'll try it, you know.
right.
So, I mean, I'm learning, I'm going to be a dad, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be different. I don't know what it's going to look like. But
Sure.
so all of a sudden, something went into power drive for me and said, crap, I've got a lot of classes I got to pass because I assume I'm probably going to have to work at some point to make money because, you know, it's basically two college students with an upcoming baby.
Yeah.
So everything just kind of went into the fifth gear, almost like clock. Maybe some of the play tennis, like, oh, I'm in trouble. What do? I just reacted.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I reacted.
Tried to rally.
There was some muscle memory that kicked in. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
And it became very clear that I had a very tight and immovable deadline.
Yeah.
And at that point, I went from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
And then I just started. I mean, I was taking like 24 hours of classes a semester. Oh, yeah. I mean, I had to if I wanted to get out on time.
Sure.
I couldn't afford to.
What's your degree?
extend
What
it.
was your degree in?
Sociology.
Okay. Yeah. How about that?
Imagine that, right?
Yeah.
And then a French minor.
Perfect segue right into
Absolutely.
real estate.
Oh, 100%. You know.
So
all
why
about
real
people.
estate? How did you get there?
I
Did you do that as soon as you had Jaden?
No, so I got my license in 2009. So I was a tennis pro because right after college, I taught at the Lexington School. I taught Spanish there for one season. And in the midst of it, I started coaching tennis at a place that's no longer here that used to be called KTA, Kentucky Tennis Academy, over on Fortune Drive.
Okay.
And then that very next year, I went into teaching tennis as a tennis pro full-time at the Lexington Tennis Club and all that. And after a while, I'm like, man, you know, it's a lot of hours on the concrete. You know, I'm on the court 40, 45 hours a week.
Sure.
If I don't work, I don't get paid. If I get injured, you know.
Sure.
So I wanted to find something that would allow me to, if I get in bad shape or I get older, that it's a little bit less wear and tear, right? And I always like kind of the idea of, I don't know, houses, fixing them up and doing all that. And my dad, you know, had been involved in some kind of a construction, even though not physically, but like on the managerial side and the contracting side. So I just kind of jumped into it. It was a bit of an accident too.
Yeah. So go back to your marriage. So how long were you married? What was that like? And how did it end? Because obviously you get divorced. And
So, you know, my first marriage, I mean, we got married, I think, was it a week? I think it was a week after graduation, May of 2002.
Yep.
And, you know, it was just a young couple that we're just...
You're behind the 8 ball a little bit. You got a
We're
kid,
way behind.
you're
And
trying to figure out life.
she's got a year left in school.
Yep.
We have no idea what that's going to look like. And all I know is that, hey, I got my first job and we bought a house that Betty, her mom, may she rest in peace, helped me co-sign to get. And so we kind of started doing all these adult things. But, I mean, Jaden was the center of our marriage. I mean, we didn't
really invest in your marriage.
Well, we didn't start a marriage,
you didn't have
let's
the time,
say.
trying to figure it out.
It's not the ideal way to start a relationship, kind of in any way. So we obviously had foundational problems.
Right.
We were a house with about foundation. And it's funny enough, the first house we bought had foundation issues.
Is that right?
It cost me a ton of money to fix it before I sold it. It was terrible. But so, you know, I got married with Michelle in 2007, so therefore about 3-4 years, you know. I've got this marriage that is, we just kind of went kind of separate ways. And Jaden was the center point of that.
You all just drifted.
Yeah, I mean, we were young, we were immature, we were not ready to be married. And
how was Jaden when you guys got divorced?
4,
Okay.
4, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so, you know, and we had been separated for a good amount of time.
Gotcha.
So it was, you know, it was a lonely time. You know, at the time for me, there was a lot of guilt and shame about divorce because even in Spain back there, it was like taboo. You know what I mean? And
even if it's miserable, you stay in it.
well, and then, you know, at one point we were living in different houses and all that. So there's just, you know, it's not what it's supposed to look like, right?
Sure.
And, you know, it's a time of loneliness where I buried myself into some working a little bit more, and I'd have Jaden half the week, and it was just basically we drifted apart and we lived separate lives for quite a while.
Yeah.
So fast forward to
So you end up running into Michelle.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I like to say she ran into me because I was at the tennis club first. But we always have that joke. But
so you're a tennis pro at the tennis club.
That's right.
And what is Michelle doing?
So Michelle at that point just got hired to be a fitness director of the gym that we had there.
Okay.
And it was not really a like a big gym kind of scenario, but they wanted someone to kind of run the facilities there and all that. So
she did Pilates.
Yes, she did Pilates. I came to learn quickly. And so I met her the first time we talked, it was May of 2001. No, sorry, backtrack. 2006, May 2006. Kind of say hello to each other, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I go on vacation, I come back, and next thing you know, I'm supposed to be doing some kids' clinics during the summer. We usually would go to the country club, so I ended up at the Signature Club.
Okay.
And I had this brilliant idea that I just needed someone to help me with the little Rugrats because, I needed help.
Sure.
And I requested specifically that this fine young lady whom had just gotten hired.
Smooth. Really
smooth criminal, buddy.
So and she doesn't play tennis?
Not really.
No.
Not really.
So
but that's unimportant. We're tossing balls to 5-6-year-olds. We're hanging out.
Yeah.
I need a companion during my time with these little children.
Female version of this?
Absolutely. Yeah. She was nice. She was cute. And she was willing to help me out. And we had a great time.
And you traded lessons.
Yes.
Did she want these lessons? So you traded her tennis lessons. You'd give her tennis lessons, and she would give you Pilates.
That's correct.
Does she want that, or is that?
I guess we'd have to ask her. A quick background. So her uncle Tom, at one point, was the director of the tennis club. So there was tennis background there, even though she never played.
Yeah.
And I think she was legitimately interested in lessons, also.
Maybe a little interested in you.
Well, I think so too. Hopefully, it led that way. I fooled her. I just kind of, and she had kind of come off a relationship, one of those on and off kind of. She's told me before, like, what attracted me from you was that you pursued me.
Yeah.
I'm like, you pursued me. We got to know each other. We shared this lessons with one another as a way to get to know each other and whatnot. And I like to think that she was interested because she's, she never had a chance to really play. And she was never really able to play sports growing up.
Yeah.
So for her, it's like, hey, I'm getting to, basically in her mind, I'm like, I'm getting lessons from the best tennis pro here in this club. And he happens to speak Spanish and, I might like him and everything. So
tell me about your first date.
So we were supposed to, Smooth Criminal Part 2.
Yeah.
So we were supposed to go to lunch at Mi Pequeña Hacienda over on Lansdowne, which is super close to the club.
Sure.
And there was
the realtor in him. He's giving us the places. Isn't that funny?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. You should always go to good places to eat. So, but the point being is, all of a sudden, there was only Michelle and I who showed up for that lunch.
Okay.
Everyone else disappeared.
So it was a staff meeting?
Not really. It was just a couple.
But did you tell her that it was a staff meeting?
No. I just encouraged the other people to go eat somewhere else. And, because you don't want to get crowded.
You guys go together.
There's plenty of places you guys can go eat. So so we end up in Mi Pequeña Hacienda. We have like a 2.5-3 hour lunch.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Did she know that she was showing up and it was just going to be you? Did
she learned quickly it was a date.
Okay. His small table.
Because she looked around and I'm like, well, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Good sport she was. She stayed the whole time. Yeah. And then we went back to the club. I taught tennis lessons. She just went to the
Did you ever watch Bugs Bunny? Do those cartoons?
100%, yeah, sure.
Do you remember Pepe Le Pew? Remember that?
Is that the little character?
The skunk that just chases that cat?
Yeah.
A little bit of this.
A little bit of that, yeah. I didn't have to chase long, thank goodness, though.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll interject here just to kind of give even more context. So Michelle, a long time ago, I was a high school pastor. Came in 99, left in 06, went to Seattle, planted church. But before that, I was doing high school ministry, and Michelle was one of our students. And so had a lot of students, hundreds of students, but I always remember her being consistent. She was always there, always seemed very strong in her faith. She was not just in programs, but she went to our trips, CLI, some of the summer stuff that we do, things like that. And so you not growing up with Christianity, her being a Christian, her trying to figure out you and learning that you're not a Christian. How did her faith create tension in your dating relationship? What was that like?
Well, it was interesting because for me, it was very new to date someone who I was like, wow, this woman really, truly, like faith is very important to this woman.
Yeah.
Like
First woman you'd ever dated that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So
my wife the same. Dated a lot of other girls before.
Uncharted territory, right? And I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I just know I like her and we have a great time together, and she's loving and she's kind and she seems to be very consistent, like you said, and very congruent with what her faith tells her in a lot of ways. And you know, we're young. I'm sure there was a few things that created tension there, but I think the biggest part was too, you know, she knew that I had a 4-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And fast forward, that's been one of the points where we've talked about before, where she just felt, because I popped the question very quickly after we met. Like first date was like
5 months, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember exactly because we had our first date, I think it was the 3rd or the 4th of August. January 6th, I proposed to her. I took her to Spain with my son that winter to meet my parents.
She had no idea that you were going to ask her?
Oh gosh, no, not at all. The fact she even came,
you took her on the home court right there.
I went big, dude.
Yeah.
And the first time, and I didn't remember this, but the first time I met her parents, apparently I told her mother, I'm going to marry your daughter or something like that.
Yeah.
Like who does that?
Yeah, sure.
Like completely, I'm like, I'm sure you would have loved that as as somebody's trying to, meet Avery at the time.
Oh,
like, hey, I'm going to marry your daughter. Be like,
right?
Oh, buddy, you have
We'll see.
many sessions to
See
go
the
back.
shovel in my hand? Yeah.
Right. So, but anyway, so ironically enough, we go there, we come back engaged. And at that point, she had to make a tough decision because she's like, hey, I'm basically marrying this guy who has a 4-year-old. Like, that's a big deal. I mean, she was 23 at the time, I believe. And she told me later, I'm like, I just felt this calling that your son and you needed me just to get to know Jesus.
Sure.
That's what she told me.
Sure.
At the time, I didn't really understand what that would mean.
Yeah.
And I told her, I'm like, hey, listen, I can promise you 2 things. You'll never be bored with me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I also don't know that I'll ever be able to join you in that part, in that journey of faith.
Did you say that?
100%.
Wow.
I mean, if one thing I am fairly transparent.
Sure.
And I figured if I'm going to ask a woman to marry me,
I just needed her to know up to
well, I needed to know at the same time
I'm not sure
that
I'm in this way.
I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to be.
Yeah.
So I gave her that's the kind of stuff that if you want to get out, that's your get out of jail card. Like, it's right there, right?
Yeah.
And I told her, I'm like, I will have children with you, even though at the time I was kind of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Had a 4-year-old. I didn't know how I'd feel about having kids again because, I don't know. I was a little guarded because the first one did not work out well.
No, and on the side here, just on the side, this is not where we were going, but it's interesting because what happens sometimes, I will run into men or women that have been divorced and they've got kids. And in their mind, they go, it's just never going to happen. And it's like, well, let's not put limits on God. And here's the reality. If someone walks into your situation, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether you have children or not, whether you've been divorced or not, if they aren't comfortable with your story, then you know what, that just tells you that, hey, they're not the right person. But the reality is that right person might just be there. We just need to wait on God's best. And again, you're not looking for God's best.
Right.
And in some ways, she's trying to figure out what does that mean.
Yeah.
And in some ways, there's probably a little bit of compromise on her own part to go, that she would marry you, but she loves you, she loves Jaden, and she says yes. And so in this, I'll kind of move us a little bit.
Yeah.
What I know about your wife is that she had been praying for you to know Jesus, regardless of what you said, regardless of what, hey, I don't know that I'm ever going to join this type of party with you spiritually, but she's a strong woman of faith. She's very gifted, really cares for people. She's been modeling Jesus to you, whether you realize it or not. And so you guys get married, and she's going to church all by herself for quite a while, right?
Yeah, I would jump in every once in a while to just kind of appease her, if you will. But I was not consistent, and I would find any excuse possible to not go.
Yeah. And so you end up having Shabby, and she's now trying to get herself ready for church and get him out the door. Is she taking Jaden when Jaden's with you guys? Does she take Jaden with her son?
Not really.
Not yet. Okay.
He wasn't coming much.
Yeah. But at some point,
Never.
you guys get pregnant with Lydia, and she's like, I see parents all the time, and I brought 2 that were 6.5 months apart, and so it's hard,
tough.
and
it's work,
and to do it solo,
it's work.
And so, what does she say to you? What does she ask you?
She would, and you know Michelle real well, but she's not the kind of person that likes to ask too much. She's pretty independent. She's not, she doesn't need to be babied or, she's quite self-sufficient, but she's strong, right? And it was not as much as what she said is like, oh my gosh, that pregnancy, with Shabby, she physically struggled. I mean, Shabby was brutal on her. She ballooned up. It was like she was carrying Godzilla. That kid would kick and punch and in there. And then Lydia comes and she's just sick.
Yeah.
Just,
and she's trying to get to church.
And she's trying to get to church. And I felt, it's sad to say it, but as a very passive man that I was, I'm like, I did it out of pity.
Yeah,
I'm like, this poor woman is dying here.
Can you come with me?
Yeah, just like
help me get them ready. Will you come with me?
Yeah, let's just go.
Yeah.
Let's just go. I mean, how bad can it be? I mean, what kind of husband I am if I'm letting her basically do all this work with the 2 kids, so I can stay home and I don't know, watch an English soccer game on TV or whatever, and just do nothing.
So you show up at our church,
Yeah.
and our church isn't like every church. We're unique,
no, it
and we're bigger and lots of people. And so, what was that like? What did you notice initially? And again, I know you said you've been a couple times, but what was it like for you? Just kind of when you'd see stuff, what jumped out at you as a non-Christian coming with your wife?
It was a show. It was it was big. It was loud. It was packed. It was different. Obviously, I didn't have a previous experience like that at all. And
wasn't like your Catholic masses.
No,
sure,
man.
Sure.
We didn't have the wooden pews and all the kneeling and all that. Thank goodness. But it was a performance to me. It looked like a performance, like I'm going to the show. We have this great band that's rocking it, and I'm like, I really enjoyed the music.
Yeah.
And at the time, John Weiss would be preaching. Every once in a while, they would have a guest speaker and whatnot. But I'm like, man, I really like this John. He's very good on stage, and great messages. And I'm like, great messages that apply to other people. But man,
you were there and you liked everything, but
Sure.
but you liked it from a spectator standpoint.
Yeah, I'm outside looking in, and that's as far as I'm going. And then, of course, and we've talked about this, the baptism piece. I'm like, wow. These people sure like the hot tub, and it's like, it happens all the time out here, man. Like, and I've told you before, I'm like, all I was thinking about, it was just kind of sad, but I wasn't thinking as much about why they're doing it, but I was wondering what the water temperature was in there, because that's just how my brain works. Yeah. And it didn't really click. I mean, I was perfectly okay being present, but unengaged.
Yeah. Yeah, you liked everything. Nothing was. You didn't walk away going, "Ugh, this is horrible."
We get to go eat afterwards. Life is good.
You picked up your kids.
Wife is happy. I've done my checklist for me.
Yeah.
I'm a good husband. I did my checklist.
So I'll interject another piece for context's sake. So our family moves back from Kansas City, and I end up overseeing care at the Nicholasville campus. So I'm oversee those teams. And so part of those teams were the prayer teams on the weekend. And so Michelle was on that prayer team. And it was so good to get reconnected with her. And she ended up becoming a prayer team lead for us, and just solid. She can handle her business back there, and she loves people. And I'm so thankful for our prayer teams. And I did not realize the level of impact they are making with people.
For sure.
I mean, people come, and you never know what they're bringing, and it could be some mountaintop experiences. It could be some very heavy valley experiences. And so, we would see each other all the time, and I was in the process of writing this curriculum for this group that I would eventually, do called Fight Club. And so I was just telling her about this group that I was preparing for, and she asked me, "Hey, would you invite Edgar?" And I said, "Yeah." And so as we're talking about these things, and so I don't, I felt like I remember seeing you, and I think probably I followed up, that type of thing. But but I invited you to something that you really didn't know a whole lot. And again, it's funny because you mentioned earlier, you just kind of done stuff like, yeah, sure, whatever, and it. But talk about that when I invited you to this thing. I don't even know exactly how I sold it to you or what I said about it, but and said, hey, I got this group of guys. I'd love for you to be a part of it, that type. What was that like for you to take a step out of a big room, potentially into a very unique situation that you had no knowledge? And to be honest with you, I didn't really have
none of us did, right?
knowledge as to what this was going to look like.
Yeah. So, and to kind of give some context to what led to that point where Michelle asked you to invite me, we had every single thing just like,
oh yeah,
man, there was a buildup, and it was like, it was like I felt like Jonah trying to run away from things, man, until the whale came in a way, and it was a combination of a very challenging house built alongside with my parents who are in Spain, who are supposed to come live with us. We wrecked like 3 cars. We had a scam thing where I lost some money.
You were trying to downsize too, and then you end up going the other direction.
Yeah,
right?
It's like, hey, let's downsize. So like, let's triple the size. It just went the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
And so there's all these things, and there's tension, and there's there's a challenging trip to Europe where my son Jaden goes with the grandmother who was really ill and almost died in Europe.
Yeah.
I had to fly there with my ex-wife to go and get Jaden, and it just, there was a lot of stuff that was just, man, it was tough, and it was building up, and it kept getting worse and heavier and heavier. So fast forward, Michelle asks you to invite me to this thing that nobody knows what it's going to be or turn out to be, right?
Yeah.
I have no concept of what a men's group is.
Sure.
And especially at church, I thought we'd sit around and, I don't know, listen to you guys pray and read the Bible or something.
Sure.
No clue.
Yeah.
And I remember you reached out to me. We talked on the hallway, I believe. At one point, just briefly, you introduced yourself. I'm like, hey, what's up? I'm Hatfield. I'm Edgar.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you called me from a Seattle number.
Yeah.
And I get spam calls all the time. I'm like, well, that's just another one. But I answered.
Yeah.
And you reminded me like, hey, just wanted to re-invite you, make sure you're aware of the time and the location for our first meeting of Fight Club. And I'm like, all right. Yeah. So I showed up.
Yeah.
And
we met down the hallway here.
Yep.
And this very first one we did was in September of, was it
2018?
18, that's right,
Yes.
18. So we met in this conference room down here that seated comfortably 16.
Yeah.
And we had 14. And you know this, but you've gone from a spectator to come into church.
Yeah.
And everything's been fine, but from a distance.
Yeah.
And you're trying to help your wife out. And even though you weren't really pursuing Jesus, Jesus was pursuing you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're thrusted into Fight Club. And if you've not been to Fight Club, it's 13 weeks. It's pretty intense. It's challenging. There's a lot of application. And we talk about real things, really honest things. And this first Fight Club, we saw some incredible things, man.
Boy,
I mean,
was
heard
it
some
loaded
incredible
with stories, man.
and people. And over 13 weeks, that went from 14 to 48 guys. And groups don't typically do that. And so
in one table, right? In a square like arrangement of tables.
big rectangle.
Right.
We kept finding chairs, and it's still from staff chairs, and they were mad because they didn't get their chair back. And
Jesus
stuff like
moves, buddy. Moves the chairs too.
That's right. But what was cool about those you talk about those 13 weeks. What really spoke to you as you're walking through, just more generally over 13 weeks? What was that like for you?
I had no idea that man had potentially an opportunity to be in a place like that room at the time, and in the sense of what is talked about, and in a lot of ways, honestly, to me, it felt like we're using scripture to back up truth and to address all these important topics and things that as men will face. But at the same time, and it didn't feel churchy, if you will.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like, and I had never been to a Bible study.
Yeah.
But that's not what it felt like. It felt like, honestly, a weekly challenge, like in your face, like, are you gonna stay idle or are you gonna do something? Like I felt, as we got deeper into it, and we're talking about, not to go too much into detail, but like some father wounds or forgiveness or, identity or what a spiritual leader is. Right. Like I had no idea about any of that. And then, I'm looking at this room. Yeah. And I look at my goodness, we had about every single scenario possible, like diversity,
Addiction,
different age
depression,
groups.
Suicidal struggles.
So, dude, I'm
marriages
caught up.
hanging on by a thread.
If at all, right?
Some that were pretty solid, just trying to figure out how to be better men and better dads and husbands.
And all that's kind of like in this mix. It's like we're making a smoothie with all these different things. And it just kept giving me more and more. And I've used the analogy of, I felt like that duck that they just put the little contraption and they just kind of feed him until he cannot feed anything else in his body, and it blows up with all this information. And then eventually it led to me saying, whoa, dude, like, if this is true, I've got to do something. I don't know what it is yet at the time, right? So I'm wrestling. I started wrestling about, what does all this mean?
Right.
Because I'm seeing a progression here. And that week 7 is the beginning of the climb, the heavy climb where you really have to dig deep.
Yeah.
So as I peeled back the onion and I did inventory of my life, it allowed me to ask myself a lot of tough questions.
Yeah.
And I think, Fight Club was the vehicle for me to be able to dig back and take a look at a lot of things I had no idea that were there, or that I didn't understand why they were there.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because it's not AA, it's not, it's not that. It's very evangelistic. We're trying to build disciples.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to look at some freedom aspects of our life, that Jesus didn't just come to forgive us and love us, but he came to free us, to unburden us, and to heal us. And so there's a lot of things that we talk about in the midst of all that. But one of the things that I kind of have tagged is try, apply, and do.
Sure.
Try, apply, and do.
Yeah.
And what was interesting was for you, and we would talk some, but not over the top. And I just really wanted to let you. I'm just praying for you and just trusting the Holy Spirit to do His work.
Let me dig,
and
let me dig
you wrestle
until I'm ready.
And so, but what I didn't know was in the midst of all that, when we would send you guys home with homework, or hey, I want to challenge you to go have this conversation, or go deal with this, or look at this form and really write down some things, or I want you to think about this bookmark and some of the phrases that are on there. Which ones apply to you? Which ones do you need more of? Or whatever the things were. You did all of that.
Yeah. Only time I've ever done homework, Hatfield.
But
ever.
I mean, and it's one of those things we challenge guys to do it, and it's funny. There are moments where I go, and they did it, and it's like, why should you be surprised? But it's so scary a little bit to take some of these steps. But you did that, and so what was that like walking through that and digging out some different things? And maybe there's just one specific where you go, this for me was very telling when you challenged us about X, whatever that was.
So the Spiritual Leadership Week, where we are basically challenged to have a conversation with our significant other, our spouse, whatnot, about basically saying, hey, I know I've fallen short in probably every possible way, but I don't know how to do this. I don't know what it looks like, but I want to try it, because I'm at a point where all this crap I've done before, it ain't working. So I'm willing to give it a chance, and in a way, it's almost like admitting my shortcomings as a leader, because I didn't even know I was supposed to be one. And at the same time, because, my wife's background, I mean, she's so solid. She's so anchored in Christ. She's a leader, right? In a way, I'm almost asking her to help me figure out how to be able to lead her, which is kind of funny, right? It's almost like you're trying to go to this tennis pro and you're just learning how to hit a backhand, and you're trying to tell him, hey, can you help me lead you? And I'm like, oh, dude. But I guess it came with humility, and I trusted her. And I knew her faith was anchored in the right ways for me to go there and be like, hey, I want to be your leader, and I have no idea how to do it. And I'll probably need a couple cues, and knowing me, I'll probably need a few more. But I'm willing to try. So that was probably the single most pivotal part that started the progression that led into.
And all of a sudden, Jesus went from the background to the front for you. And so what did you feel like Jesus was doing in that time? What did you feel like Jesus was doing or saying to you?
He, for the first time ever, I felt prompted, if you will. Like, whatever this is, even though you don't know what it's like, trust it. Just go. See it through. And I told Michelle the first week, I'm like, I don't know what the heck this is that you signed me up for. This basement in this big old church with this intense-faced dude, but all this man that just want to pray. And and share their very meaningful stories, because some of them are huge. And I'm like, gosh, why are they even talking about this in public, right? But anyway, I'm like, but I'm going to
keep it to yourself, stuff it down, be a man.
I'm like, dude, why are you putting your laundry out here for all to see?
It's pretty amazing.
It is. And I told her, I'm going to see this through. Like, that's my promise to you. You suckered me into this, but darn it, I'm going to see it through. I want to see, I think I've told you that before. It was so weird to me. It was like watching a Tarantino movie where you just have no idea what the plot line is, but you're just curious enough to see, and you want to know how it ends.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was literal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
and it's kind of this way. Yeah, you don't really know where we're going.
And that's the way God communicates with me, because He knows He uses humor and random little kind of promptings and notes out there.
Tarantino movies are pretty bloody. This is pretty bloody.
Well, it registered with me. Yeah. And at the time, I was ready to give it a chance, where before, had I not had all the things lead up to that point, I might have not been willing to even show up, or, hey, been there, done that, I've been here once or twice, I'm done. Kind of like my church attendance. Yeah. Sporadic at best.
So it happens, we finished after 13 weeks, and then you reach out to me, and you call me, and you say, hey, tell me about that.
Yeah, I told you, I'm like, hey, I'm ready, dude. Like, I'm ready to take the dunk. We're going to find out that water temperature finally, right? So I'm like, man, it's just time, and I'm ready for it. And I know what it looks like now. I know what it means to take that step. I'm wanting to take that step. Yeah. Not necessarily sure about, what it's going to mean afterwards. Of course. Yeah. But I know I'm willing to.
But you know enough about what Jesus has done for you.
Correct.
And what He's calling you to do.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, eyes wide open in your life as you're looking about, it's not just about you anymore.
No,
it's about
not at all.
How does God work in and through your life? And so January 6th.
January 6th.
2019.
Yep.
4 years ago.
Yeah. Crazy.
You made the decision to follow Jesus and live for Him. It's pretty cool, because January 6th is
that's my triple crown for me, man.
So mention that.
Yeah. So I proposed to my wife on January 6th.
Okay.
As growing up in
12
Spain.
years before that. Before this decision, right?
I was hoping you wouldn't bring up the like the gap of time there, like the over a decade for this knucklehead to start paying attention.
No matter where you start, man.
I hear you.
Just matter as you jump in and
40 years of darkness, brother. But so I proposed to Michelle. She says yes. Yeah. We also celebrate the Epiphany, King's Day, in Spain on January 6th. Okay. So that's always been a date that's been significant for us, because it's kind of like, in a funny way, it's like when the Magi arrived to Bethlehem to say hi to the little newborn baby. Yeah. That's kind of when I arrived to basically getting underwater and getting baptized. And then on top of that, I get to get baptized that day. So it's like three hugely important things happening on the same day.
Yeah, it happened to be a Sunday. We did it after service. That's it was a private baptism. Yes. And so in that day, that afternoon, right after church was over. Not that it was completely cleared out, but there were people in there, and there's some people.
Some Fight Club dudes, some buddies,
some family. Yes, Jaden and Michelle baptized.
So my oldest son and my wife baptized me, and that was a super cool.
We spent a little time encouraging you.
Yeah,
which was cool. But talk about that day. Wow, how significant was that, man?
It was crazy, because it was surreal at the time, right? Even though I know I wanted to do it. Yeah. I mean, it felt strangely comfortable. Yeah. Because I felt like my tribe were there, right? Like you were there, like Steven, John, Tom, some of the Fight Club buddies and whatnot, and family were there, and it was really cool to hear people like cheer you on before you're going underwater.
Encourage you and talk about you.
And seeing the joy in my wife's face and my kid's face, that was cool, because I mean, that was all so new to me, and it was like, wow, they're fascinated by this, right? And I'm so excited, and it just worked out to be so good. And it's not like, I got under the water and I came out and I was like, wow, but it was like, man, I've done it. It's done. I'm good. Like I've got peace about what I've done, and at the same time, I know that now.
Yeah, the work starts.
Now it's kind of like, all right, buddy, we got you on the team.
This is a big deal.
Now we got you on the team.
Jersey.
All right.
That's right.
You can suit up.
Let's figure out
but you ain't starting the game unless you show some improvement here. So now you have to make changes about certain things if you're going to lead out and you're going to do all these things that you're asked to do, that you're empowered to do. Yeah. So...
Your wife sends me a text a couple weeks after this, and I want to read it to you.
You always do this to me.
This is cool. She said I just get this text from her, open up, and I was emotional when I read it, but it says it's good to have new Christians around. She said Edgar's on fire. She said new dad, new husband, new marriage. She said I think it's taken me a few weeks to feel like it really happened or that it's stuck.
Yeah.
She said I shouldn't be surprised that Jesus changes people, but Edgar truly is a new creation, and it's brought some additional freedom on my part too. She said I'm so grateful for your responsiveness to be prompted to start Fight Club, and I pray that he does it again every Monday night.
Well,
and
got her wish.
And that "Do It Again" is a reference from a worship song that we sing. This idea of "Do It Again." But when you hear that text from Michelle, I mean, how does that speak to you?
I mean, it shattered me because it brings back something painful for me, which is, gosh, to know how alone she's been.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks because you feel inept and you feel bad about yourself. Like, dude, like
she's so grateful.
She is, which makes you feel better. But you know,
but
you feel like your shortcomings are like enormous at that time, right?
But for her to go,
Yeah.
for her to hear you say a couple things about me, it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm probably never gonna join the team.
Yeah.
And then you do. I mean,
God's promises, man, and it does, and it's contagious. And then I'm sure we'll head there at some point. But there was a moment, and I cannot recollect when it was, but I think it was at some point at that in that time where she shared. Gosh, she freaking sunk me on that one. She shared her journal with me.
Yeah,
that's when I learned this woman has been praying the same prayer.
Yeah,
for a decade. Who does that? Who's got
for a decade?
A decade,
thousands
buddy.
of prayers.
I'm like, but the same verse, Ezekiel 36:26, where he talks about, I will put a new, I'll put a new heart in you. I'll put a new spirit, and I'll remove your heart of stone and turn it into a heart of flesh. And I'm terrible at verses, but
you nailed it.
Well, thank you.
You nailed it.
I don't know which version that one is. I always do NIV because I feel like I'm on my freshman season still. But when she told me that, dude, I bawled.
Yeah.
I was bawling because I felt so like, man, you've been alone. And she told me, she says, I have been praying for this for so long.
Sure.
And I feel so relieved that now I don't have to do it by myself. I don't have to lead on my own, because she wanted me to lead her.
Right.
And we've talked about this before also in some of the Fight Clubs that, with women and some of the directions and the commands they get, well, they're supposed to follow man who might not be worth following. How would we do that as dudes if it was the other way, right?
Yeah,
we wouldn't. And
she's been very faithful.
She has.
And she's also led and showed you what this looked like. And
she's modeled for me.
And for her to pray thousands of prayers, even though she felt alone because you weren't in it with her, she wasn't alone because she had the Holy Spirit. And
Thank goodness.
People around her that were, I'm sure, also interceding for you and praying for you.
Yeah.
And when I joined the party, it's like going, hey, God, would you just do mighty work tonight in and through
do your thing.
Our effort? We trust you for it. And so thinking about women that listen to, there are some women that listen to this podcast. I had a couple come up to me and tell me this weekend. It's not for them, but specifically, but it's cool that it encourages them.
It's good for them to know what we talk about, probably. Yeah. Right? We have nothing to hide.
But trying to get their husband to get to know the love of God. I mean, talk about how important she was for you. Yeah. Not even fully getting that until she
sure.
You open up these journals but she's prayed for you. She's been an example for you. She's shown you what it likes to love Jesus. Mm-hmm. She's not done anything perfectly, but man, she's really showed you this. And then she's had a heart for you and her kids in a way that you look around, you see other families, you see people that aren't in church too, and you have the backdrop of your own family that wasn't a priority. You see all of that. Looking back, how did her example impact you?
Well, it allowed me to find something that was, she was just consistent, right? So it's like, even if you don't necessarily want to dig into something or you don't agree with something in life in general, right? If you see someone that really walks that walk every day and is kind about it, and it's not in a I told you so, or let me tell you, or let me show you. It's like, it's honestly like quiet obedience.
Yeah.
It's like just total trust, that it's not up to me to change you or anybody.
How about that?
I mean, you at least, I mean, you don't realize how much muscle memory on that you have built in without you knowing it, because it's just become normal for you to see her act that way, right? So when she says something, you listen.
Yeah.
I mean, you might not be like in complete agreement or willing to go there, but you don't discard it. Yeah. So what I would tell a lot of the women is, well, I am so sorry, because as men, my goodness, we are made stubborn in general, and I think the one thing I've noticed consistently with most men is that we don't know how we get to our individual point where we're willing to listen.
Yeah.
Because I think in general, men's make, the way we're built, we're not great at following. We think we're great leaders, but I think we confuse that with doing things by ourselves, which is very different.
Sure.
So the whole submission to God, to a higher power, and to let Him lead all of the areas of your life.
Right.
Let's just say we push back pretty good, most of us, because we don't. I mean, I think we assign that as a sign of weakness.
Right.
Like, I should be able to do it on my own works. I should be able to figure it out on my own. Yeah. I should be able to not need this, right? Why do I need this? Right. So I think for a lot of women, the biggest challenge is probably to lovingly and quietly not trying to push the envelope when the guys are just not ready to listen.
Sure. And knowing when to push and when not to. And there are times where you can have significant conversations.
Yeah.
I have that with some of my family that don't know Jesus. There are times where I go, hey, listen, I just want you to know this.
Right.
I just need you to know how much you're loved, and I need you to know what you're invited into. And listen, this is your journey, but I just want you to know I'm here to help.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. But you so want it for somebody, and when you're trying to reach people that are family, it makes it even harder because you're emotionally invested. Because you go, you know what, man, I want to go. I want to be in heaven with you.
You don't treat them the same way that we treat the other people. I always think about surgeons operating on their own children. Like, I bet most of them don't want to do it. And I think with that, talking to your closest people on this earth is the hardest hurdle.
It matters,
right? Because it does. You make it much more personal.
Yes. Yeah.
So, 100%.
So you start to lead at home, and I've joked about it at first. This idea that Edgar came home, because I'm telling these guys,
glass man.
You have a shot glass of Jesus, and all you're doing is dumping it out into your marriage and into your family, and then you're going back to Jesus and partner with Him and that type of thing. But I think that there's this misconception for men that when they get into a situation like this, like you are with Michelle. You haven't led your home, and now you're challenged to lead your home, and you don't have very much biblical knowledge, and you don't have much background.
Sure.
They've not very, they don't necessarily know the enemy's in this all the time, but he's going, you can't do this. You're not going to be able to do this, and it creates doubt in men from stepping up in places where God's asking them to actually step. And so the cool thing is that for men, it's not about how long you've been a Christ follower. It's been true in your situation, Michelle. She's known Jesus longer. She's had a long relationship with Him. She's been obedient. She's tried to follow Him. She's in every aspect of her life, from where she went to school and the people she connected with, she's really tried to seek the Lord on all of those things. But it is about walking with Jesus that puts you in this place. It's about learning from Him. It's about spending time in His Word and in prayer, just praying what you got, and trying to figure out how to use that to impact your family. And the same goes with evangelism. It's like when someone becomes a Christian, we think, oh, I'm a new Christian.
Right.
And then you go, well, you need to go tell people about Jesus. You're like, well, I don't know that much about Jesus. And Jesus shows people over and over again in the Gospels.
Can you give me a syllabus on what to do, right?
Yeah. But the bottom line, Jesus goes, hey, I want you to go out. Or this woman who... the woman at the well, she goes back to her town and tells everybody. And all she has is this, she has her story.
She has her shot glass. She has her shot glass at the time.
She goes and dumps that thing out. And then all these people come to know Jesus. Or there's a demoniac who is filled with demons, and Jesus tells him to go back. And he goes back to these cities and he tells his story. The blind man who was healed, he just says, I don't know who he is. Here's what I know. I was blind, but now I see. And so he gets to tell the story.
Simple.
All he has is this childlike faith, and he goes into that situation. And so we're called to do that. We don't have to wait to go to Bible college or be in a group. We take what we have into our world. We live on mission, and we tell our story. And so the same is true with a man who didn't grow up in church and is learning what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and is married to a woman who's known Jesus for a very long time. Right. So, but here's the question that I think everybody is interested in. What was that like for you guys? She's been leading for a long time. All of a sudden, you shove in. And of course, you're not coming in and going, "Hey, your leader's here," or anything like that.
It would have been funny, but no.
But what was that like? Because she's got to create some space for you, and there's got to be a lot of patience on her part. Yeah. And you're coming in and going with a lot of humility. But talk about what that was like. This new normal that you guys have.
Sure. I mean, for context purposes, if a woman's going to pray for a decade for you to come to see Jesus, let me tell you, the patience that she must have at the time to let me lead is probably that's no work at all, buddy.
Job's like, hey, you're pretty patient.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, well, the thing about Michelle, and I can only speak for my wife, and I don't know what it looks like in other households, but I think the key is always that we just talked a bunch. We communicated about things, and it's not like she would give me a play-by-play, this is what you do, right? Yeah. She just trusted me that I would dig in enough to start adding my own way of leading, which I think is the only way it can happen, is if you make it your own and not making it weird, not making it overly biblical, because a lot of the times it is simple things like saying the blessing, like showing gratitude, like talking to your children a certain way, doing night prayers, maybe doing reading the Bible together with your spouse, having conversations, maybe doing a devotional, whatever it is, even if it means I'm a huge Skillet fan. I love Skillet. I listen to Skillet all the time.
Christian band. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I love those guys. Yeah. So all of a sudden you notice that you're starting to play different music. Yeah. And so it's not,
and that's impacting who you are. It's helping you build a biblical worldview.
Yeah. And then the kids is like, hey, they're not like, oh, why don't we listen to Guns N' Roses all the time anymore? I'm like, we still will, but we're gonna throw in some good Christian artists in there too, because and I think that's what it is. It kind of starts as something small and it kind of keeps growing. Yeah. And it's almost like, to use the analogy of a tool shed, you start with maybe like one or two tools that you use fairly decently, and then you keep adding some of them on. Yeah. And next thing you know,
you can build something.
You build something, and there's confidence.
Legacy.
Yes.
Faith.
Yeah. And your kids help you lead.
Yeah. Buddy.
That's the biggest thing. The kids help us lead
kids,
so much.
Their questions, our availability to them, us being able to ask good questions of, hey, how was your day? Tell us
and they're poignant questions. They don't have any masquerading. When they're curious about something, I wish as adult men we would be more that way. Like they're trying, like, Dad, what happens to your body when we die? And I'm like, oh boy. So I have to say quite a few times, like, hey, honey, I don't know the answer to this.
Let me go dig this out.
Let me dig this out. Or why don't you ask Mom first, just in case, and then
let's go sit, and then you're able to lean in.
Yeah, give me some time to Google this or whatever. You know what it is, or I shouldn't Google it, obviously, but or even like Sunday nights, we're not great at it, but we try to do some Bible study all together, and we're just talking about things that matter. We've been talking
everyday
about
life.
Yeah, man. We're talking about gender identity a lot with our kids right now.
Sure.
It's important.
It's everywhere.
We're talking about the things that they need to watch out for.
Sure.
We're talking about how are you able, if you meet someone who's not on that wavelength at all, how do you explain your faith to someone who doesn't know anything about it, right? Yeah. So how do you
how do you lovingly respect somebody?
Absolutely.
Even if they're in different places.
100%. Yeah. And getting past this terrible mindset that the world has put us, that if you're not on the same page or if you disagree,
that you don't
love people.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, in fact, you love people
enough.
Yeah.
I love you enough to say, and
I love you so much.
Both ways.
I'm seeing what you're doing, and I love you so much. I want to make sure that I bring up, like, hey, you might want to really look into this, because this has a consequence that it does matter, and it changes things.
And you've got a college student, you've got a middle schooler, and you've got an elementary
school kid. Man.
And so they're all in different places, and so you're simply just trying to learn more about where they are and helping them take the next steps along the way. But it's one of those things where you just peel off the pride and you go, you know what? Dad's learning, and they know that.
Oh, yeah.
But that's also
Yes.
spoken a ton of value to them, I think.
Yeah.
You know, them, especially with Jaden. I mean, Jaden became a Christian before you.
I know,
and
right?
all of that.
He beat me to the punch.
And then in the midst of over the last couple of years, you guys have had some pretty amazing moments in your family.
Yeah,
and
we
so
have.
and so especially with Xavi and Lydia. Talk about those baptisms. Talk about what those are like.
So it's been really cool to be able to, obviously Michelle got baptized a long time ago out in this church, and I think she was maybe like 9 or 10, and she was very mature at the time she just really understood what faith was, and she knew what she wanted, and her parents at the time felt like, hey, she's ready.
Yeah.
Well, we felt the same way. Xavi was, he was a little younger, maybe, I don't know, he's 12 now, he's going to be 13.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. Anyways, not the point, but the point is he was ready because Xavi is very much like Michelle. They're Justice Leaguers, I call them. Like
Just as what?
Justice Leaguers. Like
Justice
they're like the
League,
Justice League people.
Yeah, yeah.
They're very big into justice. They just know right and wrong,
Yeah.
and they're very black and white.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't play with gray very often. If something is true, it's true.
Sure.
If something's a lie, it's a lie. So Xavi came to want to make that decision. Also, he's seen his older brother and his father get baptized, and he's already involved here, and he's like, hey, I'm ready to do it. Sure. Fantastic. So my oldest one, Jaden, and I get to baptize him.
Yeah, dude.
Super cool.
That's
I mean, what a moment, right?
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, the little queen's like, I am ready too. You better make room for me.
Yeah.
And then we let mom baptize her because we just kind of kept it boys and girls kind of thing.
Sure.
But I mean,
What a cool thing.
and then we're like, hey, 5 for 5. We're good.
Yeah.
Like the house is good.
And you got great kids, man.
I do.
You got great
They
kids.
have a great mom.
They have a great mom, and they've got a dad that's been redeemed,
Well,
that's stepping in and learning how to love them well. And I mean, Jaden has come with you to Fight Club some.
Yeah.
And it's cool watching him. And so in this, God has just done a remarkable work in your life, and Fight Club's been a big chunk of that.
Sure.
And so you've been a table leader. The first time we didn't have table leaders. I would teach, and then I would ask the questions. We went around the room.
Kind of outgrew the space,
too many. We went. We gotta make this smaller because not everybody wants
divide
to talk.
and conquer.
You don't want to talk in front of 48 guys about your stuff. We're asking hard questions, and so you've been a table leader for that long, and you've gone everywhere with me.
Yeah.
And in fact, you
Pretty
did it over the summer, which I never do. You did your own group where you connected with guys and walk through the content, and you've done that. And so now we're in Richmond. This is the 8th time that we've done it. It's been at every campus, and right now that at the end of this semester, I'm going to start filming all of this stuff so that way it's available at every campus and for anybody who wants to use it. And we'll talk more about that later. But for you, it's been so significant that it's not because you feel like you have to. It's just created a passion in you to serve and be a part of a culture-changing thing for men. And so talk about why Fight Club's been so significant and maybe why a guy should go and be a part of it at their campus at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, all of us have a passion for something that's impacted us individually.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, I see myself in so many of the tables of who I used to be or who I'm changing into. I mean, the nice thing about this space that we've created with Fight Club is you got them all there mixed together, which is fabulous.
All ages, stages, faith,
stages being the
beliefs.
keyword, I think. So for me, it's my way of, I had never thought about spiritual gifts, okay? So I've always felt like, I'm comfortable. I can talk to anybody.
Good with people, man.
I don't have a problem putting myself in a new stage, even if I don't know what the stage looks like. And I'm not shy about giving my opinion or talking about whatever. Nothing's off limits with me. So for me, this platform of being able to just share my story, which I've learned that's the biggest thing that men make a mistake about is they undermine their story.
Yeah.
They do not believe,
regardless of what it is.
They don't believe it's good enough, or they believe that somebody else is always better.
It's not a strong enough testimony.
I don't have enough father wounds, or I don't, whatever.
The Bible says we were dead because of our sin. He made us alive in Christ, and so that's a story.
It is a story, and I think what ends up happening is when you realize, hey, my spiritual gift is what. And that might be something you deal with a lot of dudes. I mean, I feel like a lot of guys don't know what their spiritual gift is.
Sure.
I feel very much secure on mine, which is to share in this way via Fight Club, share my story, help people take steps, ask tough questions.
Yeah.
Lead by sharing all the mistakes I've made and continue to make, where I struggle and all that. And also it's a huge accountability thing for me, because I've understood that I can't think, hey, I'm good, and I parked the car. Like I need to stay sharp, iron sharpens iron.
It helps us be better men.
Dudes need to be in community.
Yeah.
And that's something that I had never done before.
You need a band of brothers.
You do. And great relationships, with yourself, with Tom, with Matt, with John. I mean, I've got now Chris. I mean, we're developing relationships with men that are anchored in so much more depth than the majority of the relationships that men have with other men.
Sure.
And they might have known each other 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And yet they might not ever talk about certain things that are really important. Like, how's your marriage? Hey, are you struggling with this? Or, where are you winning? Where are you losing? How can we pray for each other?
Closer than family, a lot of these.
Honestly,
they really are.
Yes.
Which is really cool. I mean, it is. God sabotaged me that way.
Hey, listen.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's been so fun to see God work and move in so many men's lives, and God just continues to show us that, and it's been fun to be able to do life with a lot of these guys, which has been good. Last thing I want to talk about is you guys came to me last spring about renewing your vows.
Yep.
So talk about that.
Oh,
Why
boy.
you want to do that?
Well, we felt convicted, both of us. We felt convicted that when we started our relationship, when we first got married, when we first got together, well, she was a believer and a Christian, and Christ was at the center of her life, but he wasn't at the center of mine.
Yeah.
And so the promise I made to her in front of God, the vows I made were just Edgar promising Michelle.
Yeah, they were in front of God, but they weren't really with God.
And no, they were very well meant, obviously,
and you meant them.
A million percent.
You've not stepped out of your marriage. You've been faithful to her.
Not at all, far from it. But as we've kind of gone through this journey, there was really two things that I think would summarize why we did it. The first one was to really be able to make that marriage really a covenant marriage, with both of us putting Christ at the center of that marriage and trusting him with all of the parts of that marriage, whether that's finances, whether that's, how we raise our kids, work, whatever. Nothing's off limits. Like we don't get to, hey, God, you can have this 4 chapters, but I'm keeping this 2 to myself. Like wide open.
It's your whole life.
Right. And the other one was to show our children that mom and dad did not start their marriage the way we hope they start theirs one day.
Right. And I didn't tell you to say that.
No,
some people would go, you told him to say that.
I have not been prompted, and not only have I not been prompted, if you had, I probably would have forgotten, because I do not follow directions well. But
she the Bible says that you shouldn't be unequally yoked, which means you shouldn't marry somebody who's not a Christian.
And we're new creations.
And so I mean, she's fought hard spiritually for you.
Yes.
And you made some vows to her, but they were empty as it relates to Jesus, but not empty as it relates to Michelle.
Correct.
And so you went, I want to I want to say these again with my kids, and I want to say them from a foundation that's very different than the one that we started in this marriage with. Which is cool, right?
My previous promise was pretty strong, I felt like, but this one is unbreakable.
Yeah, covenant.
It is, and that's one of those church words we learned, right? But it took me 40 years to learn it. But we both felt very convicted at the same time about it, because we feel like right now, my goodness, the world is portraying marriage as a Kleenex.
Right.
Or, hey, as long as you are attracted to each other, life is great. But if there's any kind of hardship or whatever, me first. And that's the thing that we want our kids to also know. Like, we want them to know we've made a lot of mistakes. Yeah. And now our foundation is much stronger because he's in the center of it. Yeah. And also, we hope that models... And we pray for that. That's something that, like, you've just gone with through that with your girl Avery. Yeah. I mean, man,
I pray for their future husband.
Yeah, 100%.
And even if he's reckless like you or I, that he comes to know Jesus. Yeah. That's what I care about.
That he's coachable at some point and he's willing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't care if he grew up in church. I mean, I'd love for him to grow up in church and follow Jesus all the days of his life. But you know what? Regardless of whatever his story is, that he would find Jesus, and Jesus would change him.
It's worth fighting for, and honestly, as parents, if we don't do that, what are we good for?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like our two goals in life are to teach our children about Jesus and how to follow him. And in my opinion, to teach him about money, how it works, that it is a tool and it's not an idol.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you get those two things right, it doesn't matter what you mess up.
Sure.
They're going to have a good foundation.
Yeah. So that day we go to your house.
Yeah. My dining room.
It was the date was
September 24th.
Yeah, September 24th. And so Sarah and I, my wife and I, and then our two younger ones.
Yep.
My oldest was in college, or she was working or something.
Yep.
And we go to your house, and you and Michelle are there. Jaden's there. Shabby's there. Lydia's there. And we get there and we're talking, hanging out, that type of thing. And then we go and you showed us around the house. You guys had just moved in there and stuff. And then in this front room, I don't know if it's a family room or maybe
it's a dining room that we use seldomly. Yes,
but yeah, it's the same here.
Right.
But you have a table set up and you've got some stuff from your all's wedding. You got pictures.
Yeah, dude.
You got photo albums. I think she had her veil out or some flowers or something like that.
Yeah, Lydia was trying it on. I'm like,
it was neat to see all of that.
Yeah,
and so we got to talk about that, and your kids were able to see that. And then, we then eventually kind of moved to, and when I say it wasn't formal, I've done like 3 or 4 of these. I've not done that many of them.
Right.
But we kind of, we moved into, where, my family's sitting and your family's sitting, and then the 3 of us are standing. I'm right up against the wall, and
close quarters, buddy.
And so, and I'd gotten, I was able to, I wanted to communicate your story to your kids, and I wanted my kids to see your story too. And so
that was awesome.
So literally, we start doing this, and I mean,
it was emotional, brother. That tested me to the limit.
As soon as we got to, all right, we're going to do this, I look at my notes and I look up at you guys, and I'm super emotional, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of Michelle, and I love that your kids are this is kind of a defining thing that they're never going to forget, And so we walked through y'all's dating story, and I was bragging at me. I'm like, this is how it happens, Jade. See you in, that type of thing. Yeah. Which was cool for your kids to hear. I talk about the importance of Michelle, her impact in your life spiritually. I talk about our families, how that just kind of merged in some of those situations, and just how significant she was to you, and then also for Jaden as a stepmom.
Oh, 100%.
And then with your other 2. And so we got to talk about just how patient and how prayerful and how consistent. We talked about you coming to Fight Club, and how that was so unbelievable, and your decision to be baptized, and they were there for that. And I communicated what it means to love God individually and as a family, which was really, really cool. And then I just remember looking up, and of course you guys eventually you look up, but I can see Jaden. Yeah. And man, he's got the best heart. And
he does.
I look over, and he is just
he is dying.
Bawling.
He's bawling.
He's wrecked because he knows the man that you are, the man that you were, but the man that you are. And he also knows that woman that you're married to that has worked her tail off to fight for you and fight for him. She's been consistent. Yeah. He's been the recipient of that too, not just you, And
it was very emotional for him and for me, and so me seeing him was probably the worst part, because we're made like we're dead alike, and we were just we were incredibly joyful, but we were suffering through it because it brought back a lot of things. Sure. I mean, it was really truly a new beginning. In every sense of the word, and he's been part of that from the very beginning.
Yeah, you got to write. You all wrote letters to your kids, and you handed it to them. We talked about reading them, and there was no way we could have done it.
You got to know when to stop.
And then I did vows with you guys, let you guys share your vows. I actually had you share the good confession, which is basically you just repeat it again. I believe with all my heart that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. He's our Lord, our Savior, and our friend.
Right.
And then you got to share. You both wrote something.
Yeah, we had created our own kind of vows.
To each other, and then you read. And dude, that was so awesome. It was so cool.
We never did it on the first one.
Yeah.
Right? So we never actually made our vows. We just repeated them. But now we've got a long enough story together, and of change and of newness, and it was cool and it's kind of funny because we're kind of dorky that way, but they were pretty similar to one another in terms of the message, which is nice because
you're one.
And it feels good to see that you're walking together.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, all that
absolutely.
stuff that annoys the crap out of a lot of couples when you finish each other's sentences. And like, listen, intimacy is not built overnight, and intimacy comes in many forms. And you really get to know someone through marriage
Right.
if you let each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny to hear what she wrote and then what I wrote. And it was just cool to have you there as officiating that, because we needed like
It was so fun, man.
It was cool. I encourage everyone to at least consider it.
Well, and then we wrapped up. We
Right.
went to the Mexican restaurant that you went on your first date, and then when you guys got married, you had them cater.
We were their first catering job, and I have to say who they are because I love them. But
it's sponsored by.
Sorry, buddy, but you know I'm not getting paid for this. But Mi Pequeña Hacienda with Julian and Lorena Gallegos, the owners. I mean, they even did the catering job when I became a citizen.
Is that right?
Like they're at every meaningful meal in our lives.
And when we got to the table there in Brandon, they were there, and and
they stopped by.
So you got to tell them what you had done, and I got to meet them. They were so kind, such a sweet family, you know. And so, but it was cool to just kind of see how those things came together.
They're part of our story in their own way too.
Yeah.
They're
multiple times.
Important milestones. There's been that Mexican food on the table for us, dude. So it was really cool.
It's fun to hear you order too, because I'm like, hey, what you got? You said burrito, and then you walk through things.
I've known those dudes since 2007. There's a lot of workers there who have been there a long time, and I just gotten to know a lot of those guys, and I just love.
Well,
love it.
before we land the plane, you talked about people should consider this, and so I've done 3 or 4.
Yep.
I know that some Scott and John have done vow renewals. I'm sure Greg and plenty of our pastors have done that before, but it's one of those things where renewing your vows. Sometimes I did one for a family that they'd been married 30 years. I did one for a family that neither of them knew Jesus, and they both knew Jesus, and it was really cool. It's awesome. And sometimes it's just out of, you know what, we just want to say this, and we want to bring people together. And sometimes it's out of your situation. You didn't know Jesus, and one of them did, or maybe it's been out of addiction, or maybe you've been through some hard times.
Yeah,
and you're just going, hey,
listen,
I just want to communicate to my spouse,
to my loved ones, and my spouse.
I'm in. I love you. I'm faithful to you, and I'm committed to the end of this. And we're going to do this together with God's help, and that type of thing. Anything that you would challenge men, just as they maybe even should wrestle through that, whether they've been married 3 years or 30 years, it makes no difference.
Yeah, I think for men in general, I think, and not just men, but I think it's important that each marriage, especially as you've got some traction, a few years together, that maybe you look back at and say, hey, when we started, was it just us promising each other? What does that look like? Have our lives changed?
Yeah.
And it's obviously a very personal thing, and for a lot of people, it might never be an option or something they consider. But I think it's important in a marriage too, and we talk about gauges at Fight Club about throughout our lives, our different areas in life can be up and down and whatnot. But I think there are times where it's good as a husband and wife to just talk to each other about, hey, what's our journey looked like since the beginning, and has anything in the middle been impactful or changing enough to where we get to a point where we want to almost make a declaration almost as like a legacy declaration to those that we love, specifically with maybe children and all that. So I think anytime you think about marriage together and you really are honest about, hey, where were we, where are we, and where we're going, maybe something like that, is worth praying about and thinking about, because I always joke with Michelle about the decades. I'm like, hey, our first decade, we were busy as crap, man. We had no time to think. We're making babies, making all kinds of crazy life decisions. Now on the second, decade of marriage, I feel like we're starting to get settled, if you will. Yeah. And who knows what that's going to look like. So I think it's good to stay on point as you're following this journey. Yeah. So.
Dude, I love you.
I love you too, brother.
It's so good to hear your story, and I think a lot of men and a lot of marriages will be encouraged by today, and just real grateful for who you are. I love getting to do Fight Club with you. You're not, belong to me, but it's I've joked that wherever we're going, just like, hey, let's do it. Where are we going? Let's do it.
Hour and a half radius is probably the cutoff, right?
Yeah. But you're a warrior that fights for the most important things, and I'm super grateful for you and your friendship. and just what who you and Michelle are. And so today again was on Life Changes, what God does when He changes a man, and it has the potential of changing everything. And in your story, it really has. And thanks everybody for listening. If this podcast has helped you, share it with a friend. If we can help you in any way, or you'd like to share how this podcast is encouraging you, feel free to shoot us an email at lockerroom@southland.church. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in next week for the next 2 words. We'll catch you next time on Locker Room.